Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break. Maybe managed to get a little bit of fresh air. Anyway, that was a marvelous introductory talk by Peter, and I think really sets the scene of the importance of art, which is very undervalued by many people in this modern world of ours. So now I'm very pleased to introduce Venetia Nevill, who is herself an artist and a tender and healer. Venetia has a passion for nature and creates spaces for people to connect to the natural world and to ancient festivals and sacred waters, particularly. She works a lot with sacred water. And I'd especially like to thank Venetia for providing us with the lovely mandala image, which we've used to promote this conference, and you will have seen at the beginning. This is a work she has, an installation she has made. So Venetia is going to speak to us on the spirit of the land, and I would like to welcome Venetia Nevill.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm hoping I can work the share screen. And it was just lovely to hear the talk we just had by Peter. It was just absolutely wonderful, really inspiring. So let me just see if I can just start from the beginning. Slideshow from the beginning. There we go. Excellent. So yes, I'm delighted to be here, and I thought I would start with that image which you so kindly used. It was just a lovely opportunity. And really it's called Spirit of the Land. So I do feel I'm in the right place today. And I very much, I'm inspired by nature, and I feel that there's a sort of co-creation that happens. And I've been guided by so much. And like you said about the waters and the trees. So this was an exhibition that I had earlier this year, and the purpose of the exhibition was mainly to honor this beautiful sacred spring on the right. And it's a chalybeate iron spring, and so it has this wonderful sort of healing qualities. And I discovered it and was shown and guided by other people who know about the waters. And to begin with, I just hung around there, and then it turned into like a devotional practice. And as I cleared the spring, which you couldn't even see it to begin with, you just saw this gorgeous iron puddle. As I cleared it, it felt like it was clearing my family, that there's illnesses that were going on, and I would take people there and gradually sort of make art, but without it being that sort of intentional. It was just playing. It was more like playing. And as I cleared to reveal the beauty of this spring, which I'll show you more later on, I placed the bits that, the debris, the old leaves, on what I call a moon cloth. So I left the cloth out under the willows, out in the elements for a couple of months and let it just imbibe the energy. And I also discovered that if I painted with the spring water, it created these magical creatures. And I will show you some of that later on. So this was the center of the exhibition, and it was an interactive installation. And the pathway is created from cedar, and a rather beautiful tree was dying and had to be cut down because it was dangerous. And when it was cut, I was just devastated because the smell, I wish you could smell it. I wish this was a sensory experience, because a lot of my work connects to the senses. So I vowed to honor the cedar through art again, through using the cedar. I carry some in my pocket to give as gifts to other people, because I believe that it's part of that, the recycling of life. And it's just been such a great teacher, that this tree and another one I'll talk about in a second, that what appears to die, it just changes form. And so the invitation at the exhibition was to walk in this mandala and to stir the iron, which is in a clay pot that I made at the center, and make a blessing for anyone who is suffering. And my experience is that when I walk in sacred places, when I walk with purpose in mandalas, that something shifts, and that I think Jung discovered that when we do this, the walking in and then the walking out, it sort of joins the two sides of the brain and it creates wholeness, which is what healing is really. And so this is what I offered at the exhibition. And I think I might move on to the next one. So yes, and I'll talk more about the exhibition later on. So like I said, the trees have been guiding me, really, really guiding me. And this is another beautiful, I mean, God, I love this tree. And it crashed. It's an oak tree and it really felt sacred. It had a very special energy. And it crashed all of a sudden for no reason. It was devastating. I mean, I howled with the other one, but I really howled with this one. And then I just intuitively wrapped some hessian around the roots, and I left it there for a couple of years. And I was late at an art college. I didn't think I was good enough. I thought you had to be really perfect to do art. And they said, why don't you play a bit? And so I started, I took the hessian off, and I've been making prayers and blessings to the trees, which is just sort of what I do in nature anyhow. And the picture on the right is from more recently done with gall ink. So making galls, those magical alchemical things that are made from the wasps in the acorns. And I use, or I borrow, or we co-create together things from nature. And when I was at art school, before I went, I threw away my paintbrushes. I was such a perfectionist, and it liberated me. I painted with feathers. I paint nowadays with whatever has meaning. You know, if something's broken and I'm feeling broken inside, I will paint with that and express myself in that way. So this is an exhibition called The Earth is My Witness that I had a few years ago. And you can see that I hung the hessian up. And when I hung it up, I was like, oh my goodness, it's like a shaman. It's like the spirit of the oak. And it just has this gorgeous smell and presence, and it's still very special. And the picture on the left is created with gall ink and algae and other sort of magical potions, and was inspired by the oak, but also the idea of the triquetra, the sort of birth, death, rebirth, the symbol of the three, and the sort of that cyclical, the cycle of life. I mean, a lot of what I now work with is recycled and regenerated. And so this is the exhibition again. And at the back is this light box. And I can't remember what I called it actually. No, Drumming the Earth. I think I called it Drumming the Earth. I buried some canvas where the cedar had fallen and I left it there and let the worms and the earth sort of make the markings. And then I lit it with light. And I discovered, I can't remember how, something about, I love sound, the Schumann resonance is the magnetic field of the earth. And so I used the frequency, the resonance, to activate the cedar. And there's a little film later on of it moving. And then I had an extra week at the gallery, and I'd found it very stressful doing, oh God, all the stuff that one has to do. And so my daughter said, why don't you make a mandala? And I was like, oh, I don't think I can do that. You've got to be perfect. And she went, no, just make what feels right. So I used the things that had meaning for me and my intuition, really. And then I did a little performance and sprinkled the cedar and moved it with feathers. And this began a completely different part of my journey with making mandalas, a lot on my own, but gradually doing them with other people, but mainly as a devotional practice to connect with nature and to connect with myself. And that sort of conversation began, and the listening and it's just been magical. So this is an exhibition I had at Sevenoaks. A lot of my exhibitions seem to be in Sevenoaks at the Kaleidoscope Gallery. It was about Virginia Woolf, and we got to choose a book each. And I was like, eek, what am I going to do? And I found a passage about the birch tree, a circle of birch. And I was like, thank goodness, I can do something with that. And so the birch tree I discovered is about all sorts of different things, including for those who mourn the dead. It's the Waysha, it's the goddess tree, it connects to the moon. And so I also discovered it was the first letter of the Ogham alphabet, and I'll talk about that soon. But at the center of this installation is a dish I made with raku, which is like alchemical, fire and water. You don't know what's going to happen. It's rather lovely. And then in it, I created these little medicine bundles. And medicine bundles in South America contain something called koyas, which are sacred stones, and they're imbibed with the breath, and they're a way of connecting to the ancestors. And so I created these little medicine bundles, and with the birch and with feathers. And Virginia Woolf, of course, died with drowned, bless her, with a stone in her pocket. And so I created these, and they can I mean, a lot of my stuff is about ritual, and I don't necessarily know what I'm making until I'm making it, or maybe even till afterwards why I'm making it. I just sort of do it. And it can connect, these medicine bundles can connect us to a different state of reality. And I love the birch. I just think it's sort of magical. So during lockdown, I was so tired, and I just, I had an art get together with some friends, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I thought, I'll go to the trees. And I've been looking for a teacher to teach me about the trees, and to teach me their spiritual meanings and the sort of practical things. I just wanted a teacher, and I kept finding fascinating people, including the lovely Mark Golding, if anyone knows him. And then I wandered under, I think it was a fir tree, and I saw these broken branches all over the place, and it just felt like the tree was communicating something. And I was like, that's curious. It feels like there's something going on here. I wonder what it's about. And so I picked up the various bits that I was drawn to, and I took them home and I placed them on some paper. And as I did that and moved them, I noticed it was a bit like family constellations, that something shifted in me, that my relationship changed as well. And it really sparked my interest. So I played with it for a bit. And then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go to the birch. It's the first letter of this wonderful Ogham, pronounced Ogham or Ogham, depending on how you feel. It's this wonderful language, which isn't written. It's spirit communicating in signs and symbols. And it's an ancient Celtic alphabet of 20 trees, beginning with the birch and ending with the yew. And all I really felt at that time was I wanted just to sit. I found this tree growing out of another tree. I love that it was growing out of the dead roots of another. And I just sat with the tree for about a month, mainly just being and connecting to my senses and touching and singing and telling her stories about herself. And it was just such a relief. And I realized that I didn't need a teacher, that the trees, of course, were going to teach me. And then after a bit, I started finding out things, and that I could make ink out of, and I love using ink. And so I made a bit of birch ink, and then I wrote a love letter to her. And then I discovered that one of her wisdom teachings is to move gently out of our comfort zone. And so I thought I better find out what the next tree is. And it was a rowan. And I didn't even know what a rowan looked like. So, but I found one in my garden, amazingly. I'm very lucky where I live. I live in a magical place. And so I took some offerings from the birch tree, which is, I tend to always carry the sacred spring water with me. I take the water to the trees and to all sorts of places. So I went to the rowan and played some music and made some, and the same thing, and found different things. And what I discovered was it does take courage. It's a really deep, almost shamanic process going through the trees, and challenges come up, and it's not just sitting and hanging out. A lot of things. And a lot of these trees taught me, this is a great communicator, the rowan. A lot of trees taught me about the courage of the heart. And for me, the creativity is a pathway to presence, to being still, to being present, to really enjoying this moment. And that's what I try and bring into the gallery when I go into the gallery, is that experience. And what I hope is that people will enjoy the nature that I bring, and then go out and see and interact with nature in a different way, maybe more slower, more conscious. So this is the willow tree. And if you can see the spring, isn't it heavenly now? It's sort of clear, and I dug a pathway down to the local stream trickle, and then that leads into the Medway. And there's a lot of people helping clear the Medway if anyone's interested. So at the center is a blessing, and with the lavender, and I made charcoal from the willow, and it's a curious tree. I'm in an exhibition at the moment called Hanging in the Balance. Guess what? It's at Seven Oaks again. And I was like, great, this gives me an opportunity, because the month thing happened by accident. I just realized it became obvious that the time to leave the tree and move to the next one was the new moon. And so I limited myself to a month. I really would love a year with each tree. And so I weaved some old willow, but I hadn't tried weaving. And I was like, great, I can try weaving and someone can teach me. It's really hard. And so the idea of it is that the willow reveals the unconscious, and it's a pain reliever. It creates aspirin, but it can bring this pain to the surface. And it really, with the times that we live in, I think I'm not alone in the stuff that comes up. And so I created this installation that there's a glass dish which I molded on a willow tree, and I was taught by someone how to make glass, which is an extraordinary thing. I'd love to do more of that. So I molded, got the energy. I've got some clay with me at the moment, which I'm enjoying just handling doing this talk. And then I left a little basket in it for people to anything that seems to be a bit of a theme that has pain or needs relief, to make an offering. And then I take the art into nature. I take it back to where I've been playing in order to just imbibe the energy and have another conversation. Like, is this the right way to go? It's sort of, I'm never quite sure. And astrology informs a lot of what I do as well. So as I've said about the moon, I also discovered that I have no earth in my chart. I'm all fire. And so here we go. So at the exhibition, I was led to do a walk. So I've been doing these mandala ritual walks, offering the connection to nature. This is the chestnut with other people and taking them on a journey. And this is just lovely. I love it's a whole new thing of what happens when you create with other people, not just on my own. And I'm just aware of the time. I've got a little film in a sec, so I'll move on a bit quickly. This is at a festival called the Heart of the Rose, and I collect things that have meaning, and then I offer them to others for them to be the guardians. Like the butler is the guardian of the threshold, and we co-create. It's more about and the magic that happens, the energy that changes. And do look on the right as well. That is the other side of the oak now. It's like a sanctuary, it's a surrender, and around it, because we put in this carbon gold, around it are all these trees as an ecosystem that's grown up through loving the oak. It's through love, really. So I'm just going to show you, it's a very short 3-minute film, and I'll just end with this, and I'll talk a little bit over it. So this is the beginning of the exhibition that I had. This is the iron, and I installed this. I'm very lucky. There's a room I got to use where I live, but used to be an office. And so I installed I was going to have an exhibition in London. This is lichen that I cooked. It smells delicious. And these are my treasures. These are things that I collect on my walks. And little rituals, the clay molded on feet, molded on the yew. Those were little balloons that I made, that I blew my breath into. And I invite people in to walk the mandala. And it connects me to the stillness. I hope it does to other people, that there is again this quality of what is inherent in nature, the still conscious awareness that's always present. These are the paintings that I use, like I said, both hands. Some are about the you and painted with you. There's one of the spring, which this is the one which I love, of the spring, and they really just appear. I just have the ritual. I do a ritual before I do it, and I connect to something else and then see what happens. This is the drumming the earth and the cedar moving. And after a while of showing it, I realized that it really needed more of an interactive quality. So I invited people to draw whatever they felt. And it's just wonderful that it will create shapes. And then, of course, it ephemeral, it disappears. And here's the beloved spring. Collecting some, asking permission, like Peter said, collecting, and then painting. I would normally put a lot more on the paper, but someone was filming me for something and I just happened to have this. So I see I've got some mistletoe. This is ash. I love the ash tree, connecting heaven and earth, the cosmic tree. And this is, yeah, my happy place. So that's it. And I'll just leave with the picture here, which is like the Ouroboros, that the ever turning cycle of life. So thank you very much, and welcome any questions if there are any. I don't know if people can say anything in the box or not, but thank you very much for listening. I've really enjoyed talking about my passions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venetia. That's another really inspiring talk. It's so lovely to see the way you work with nature and the art in nature, just as Peter was speaking about, and also lovely to see the playfulness with which you interact and the conversations you have with nature. Your art is really beautiful. Thank you so much. Another very inspiring talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
And